Sputnik is a Russian sci-fi horror movie directed by Igor Abramenko. I apologise if I've butchered that name, but the premise of the movie is really straightforward. During the height of the Cold War, a Soviet spacecraft crash lands back to Earth with its two astronauts. However, unbeknownst to them, they may have brought something back with them from space. I genuinely didn't know much about this movie other than the fact that it was a Russian alien horror film set during the Cold War. And to be honest, that alone had me intrigued, but then I started seeing some of the reviews it was getting, and it just made me more interested to see it. And also the fact that I haven't really talked about a horror movie on this channel since, I think, The Invisible Man, back in March. I just kind of wanted to talk about a new horror release that was actually pretty good, and I'm going to be honest, I ended up liking this movie a whole lot more than I thought I would, because there are a lot of aspects to this film that I was genuinely impressed by. The best way I can sum up this movie in terms of its tone and feel and even story is that it feels like Arrival, The Thing, and even the original Alien kind of all mashed into one. And I definitely mean that in a positive, because even though it does borrow heavily from said films and feel very strongly inspired by them, it does what it does in the best way possible, making it work on its own merits. Because I suppose that's one of the only nitpicks I can say about Sputnik, is that when it comes to a premise or a story like the story it has, it doesn't really bring anything new or groundbreaking to the table. It just kind of does what it is trying to do, but doesn't really bring anything else on top of that. Like, it doesn't have any deep themes or messages in it. I suppose it does to a certain extent, but it really doesn't go much further with said themes or messages, at least as far as Arrival or The Thing did in those movies, because those are simple stories, those films, but they have a lot of deep themes and messages rooted in them that you could unpick for hours. Whereas Sputnik kind of just feels like it's doing the very bare bones of what it wants to do, with a few themes here and there, but again, nothing really heavy that you could spend hours delving into, which I can see why some people can see as a negative, but personally, because this movie does everything it is trying to do in the best possible way it can do it, that whole aspect of the film in terms of its themes and messaging, I wasn't that bothered by. I can understand that, yeah, it might not seem that original, especially when you compare it to its peers and what it is inspired by. But the fact that the movie is just trying to do its own thing and it doesn't really care about anything else, and that it is doing what it wants to do the best way it can do it, is, in my books, a massive positive. And trust me when I say this movie has a lot of things going for it. The performances in this movie are all really, really good, especially the two main actors, the one who plays the psychologist, I think, and the one who plays the astronaut who survived the crash. Their two performances are really good, and it's something that strengthens the movie and pretty much holds it together, and it is something that gets better over the course of the film. I really like their performances. I'm not going to try pronouncing the actors' names because I know I'll just butcher it, but they are really, really good. Igor Abramenko's direction is phenomenal. It's very understated and very held back, but it is very confident in its execution as well. He doesn't do that many crazy things with the camera, but just in the way he moves the camera very slowly in certain scenes, and the way that certain bits are shot and the way that it's cut together, it all feels very purposeful and feels like this is a first-time director that knows exactly what he wants out of a vision and what he wants to do with it. And yeah, I just love the way this movie was shot and the way it's directed. I thought it was really confidently well helmed, and you don't see that as much as you'd expect with a first time film, especially of this magnitude. It is really well directed. I also thought the score was surprisingly good as well. Again, it's nothing groundbreaking or new, but it really, really works for the sake of the movie, especially during the very start and very end of the movie. It really does come into its own and adds a lot to the film. And yeah, I just thought it was really, really good. This movie is also surprisingly very gory, again, especially towards the end. There is a lot of gory payoff towards the end of the movie, and it took me a little bit by surprise, but when I realised it was going in that route, I really liked what it did with the gore. It wasn't too much, but that being said, there are also a couple of scenes where it really doesn't hold back either. And yeah, I thought everything in terms of this movie, from the way it's shot to the score to the effects, I thought everything about this movie was just really well executed. Again, it's not a groundbreaking movie that's going to blow your mind, but in terms of what it is trying to execute, I think it does that in the best, slickest way it could have done it. And like I said, I ended up loving this movie a whole lot more than I thought I would, which is why I'm probably going to give it an 8 out of 10. I was originally sitting at like a 7, but as the movie kept going, I was like, no, I'm really, really on board with what they are trying to do here. And the fact that the direction is as good as it is, the performance is as good as it is, and just all these elements coming together to make a very slick and tense and very expertly well-helmed directorial debut just really, really impressed me on multiple occasions throughout this movie, which is why I like it as much as I do. So guys, that was my review for Sputnik. I hope you enjoyed it, and I highly recommend you check it out if you get the chance. If you like the video, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Bye.